everybody, I'm Susan Mulvihill. Welcome back to my vegetable garden. Well, here we are going into the third week of August already. I can't believe that. And so it's time for my next virtual vegetable garden tour. But this time I'm going to do something a little differently. In the past ones, earlier in the season, I went raised bed by raised bed to show you how everything was growing. And that can get a little tedious and very lengthy. And so this time I just want to highlight a few plants so you can see how they're doing. I'm going to skip the tomatoes this time because next week I'm going to do the second step of my three-step pruning process to get as many of the tomatoes to ripen as possible. So we'll skip that one for this time. Now, before I continue, I want to give a shout out to my sister Lucy. Hi Lucy, I miss you so much. She lives in New Mexico. She's an amazing gardener. We all got the gardening bug very early on, and it's in our genes, I'm sure, from my mom and our grandmother. And she watches my videos every week down there. We haven't gotten to see her for ages because of this darn pandemic. And I just wanted to say, I miss you, I love you. Thanks for watching my videos, and thanks for keeping an eye on me. Now let's get started on the tour. I thought I'd start out with what's growing in our little hoop house because we've got some real heat lovers in there. We built it in 2014. It's something that Bill designed all by himself. I'm so impressed. And if you want to learn more about it, just go to my website and do a search for the words Hoop House Project, and you'll find a supply list and the step-by-step instructions and even a video on building it. We primarily plan to use it for growing super cold tolerant veggies during the fall and winter months without using any supplemental heat or electricity at all. Just the energy of the sun. Well, that has worked great, but we also grow different types of heat-loving crops in here during the summer months, so it gets used year-round. So let me take you inside. In one of the beds, I'm growing Tuscan Napoli cantaloupes. I've grown them for years, and they are so delicious. The seeds came from Renee's Garden Seeds, in case you're wondering. And as you can see, there's all sorts of them in here. I think we've got about a dozen of them, and they are definitely ripening. So if you're curious about how to tell when a melon is ready to be picked, let me show you what to look for. The first is the color of the melon. Now, if we just look at the one next to it real quickly, you can see it's very green. This one is turning a lovely peachy color. They're the exact same variety, but this one is starting to ripen. So when you see the color of the melon skin starting to get lighter, that means it's ripening. Also, all melons are attached to the vine by this little stem. And when that stem starts to pull away from the melon, or maybe it's the melon pulling away from the stem, I'm really not sure which, but that also means that it is ripening. You know, when you go to the grocery store, you usually don't get ripe melons because, you know, they have to take into account the amount of time it takes to transport their produce to a grocery store. And so they will cut them from the vine. So if you can tell something's been cut off, you know it is not ripe, or at least it wasn't ripe when it was harvested. But anyway, so those are the two things. And then the third thing is if you start seeing some yellow jackets or wasps buzzing around them, you know it's ripe because they can smell that sweet flesh inside, and it might not be a great sign to be looking for, but that tells you, yep, that melon is ripe. Now, if you look at the other bed in the hoop house, you will see that it's a bit of a jungle in there, and that's because we're growing sweet potatoes. And I have to add, for the first time ever, we didn't even know that we could try growing them here, but we decided to give it a go, and they're doing great. And then there's also a few pepper plants growing in here, and peppers love growing in the hoop house. They really enjoy the heat, and they are doing great. So on the sweet potatoes, you know, we're novices. I don't want to come across as any kind of an expert because, you know, we're totally winging it. However, I did look up to see when we're supposed to harvest them, and it turns out they should be harvested just before a frost. Apparently you don't want them to get frosted. Now, being in the hoop house, we might be able to extend that a little bit by closing the doors at night. but generally speaking, that's when you're supposed to harvest them, is before a frost. So we'll see how that goes. Now I realize that sunflowers are not technically a vegetable, but I did grow quite a few of them in my garden this year. I am so glad I did, because they are being champs in this heat and smoke. And look at how tall they've gotten so far. Isn't that cool? Let me show you where I've planted some other ones, because I think they look really neat. Okay, here are some more. Aren't these great? And look at these ones. They're so pretty, and bees are buzzing around the flowers. So I just had this genius idea for next year. Wouldn't it be cool if I planted some at the edge of each one on either side of an aisle? I hope I can remember that. I know folks always enjoy seeing this pole bean arbor, but it is a sad tale this year. We grow Musica pole beans. They are usually long. They're a little bit flat because they're more of an Italian type of a bean. And they are usually so productive. Well, they have not tolerated this heat very well at all, and I've been giving them supplemental watering. You can see there's a lot of yellow leaves on here already. That is mighty early for a pole bean. They should be hanging in there well into September. So that's a bummer. I've picked a few, but you know, they just didn't bounce back very well from our horrible heat wave. Oh well, there's always next year, right? Now, speaking of arbors, this is the winter squash and pumpkin arbor. It's made with 2 livestock panels or cattle panels that go up and over a pathway between 2 raised beds, which is slick. They have been growing great. They've been very productive, but as you can see, the leaves are starting to die. They're yellowing, they're sparse, and all I can do is attribute it to the horrible heat wave that we've had. But what I've got growing are cushaw squash. You can probably not see this, but I've got a little netted sling pinned underneath it because I was worried about how heavy it was, and I didn't want it to either break off or pull down the vine. And I've done the same with another one on the other side of the vine. But what I've got growing here are potimarron winter squash. You can see some orange ones here. There's quite a few of them, and they are delicious. They have a thick flesh, which is perfect. And then I thought I had planted a bunch of autumn frost squash, and I think I mixed up my seeds a little bit, and that's why I have so many potimarrons growing. I probably didn't plant the autumn frost winter squash seeds when I had this big stack of packets to get planted. I also have some butternut squash growing on the bottom here. There's a couple of cucumbers. Ooh, I just found a couple beautiful ones. Look at this. So this is lunchbox cucumber. They are so tasty. They're actually my favorite cucumber ever. I got the seeds from Burpee, and I'm really enjoying harvesting and eating them. There's also some pumpkins in here. You can't see them very well. I'll have to show you on the other side. But again, plants are really struggling from the heat, the smoke. I mean, it has just been awful. Now back to the cucumbers for a moment. Would you like my best tip ever about keeping them as fresh as the day you picked them? Well, if you haven't heard this tip yet, you are going to be amazed at how simple it is. When you harvest cucumbers, they typically will start shriveling up and getting soft very quickly. You can prevent that so easily by wrapping each one in a paper towel and putting them into a plastic bag and then into your refrigerator. Last year, I was able to keep cucumbers as fresh as the day I picked them for 3 weeks. I know this doesn't sound possible, but it is. So if you haven't tried that yet, you definitely need to, because that way you don't waste any cucumbers. I was telling you I'd show you the pumpkins growing in here, so here's an example of one. All of them are the same variety, New England pie pumpkin. That variety is very easy to find, and they make excellent pies. But you know, you can use them as a winter squash too. This is one of our onion beds, And you'll notice that almost all of the stalks have fallen over, and you can even feel where it's sort of snapped over like that. These stalks are no longer benefiting the onions at all because they can't transport moisture and nutrients to them anymore. So what I'm going to do is turn the water off to the bed, and then I'm going to pull each one up, and I think I'll let them rest on the soil surface for a couple of days, and then we're going to move them to a sheltered area, sheltered from the weather, so that they can dry enough to go into storage. We have sort of a mixture of onion varieties in here, and I'm really excited. They did pretty well. This jungle is our potato bed, and potatoes growing in both cloth grow bags and large black plastic containers. We have been sneaking a few potatoes from time to time, and they are so tasty. But generally what we want to do is wait until the plants get frosted this fall. And when the foliage is just totally brown, that's when we're going to move the foliage out of the way and dig up all the potatoes so that we can store them for the fall and winter months. But they're doing well, and I'm going to be real interested to compare varieties and see how they performed. This year I grew some Minnesota potatoes for the first time, and they took a really long time to get started. But if they produced well for us, then I will give them good marks. I thought you might like another update on how my greenstock vertical garden is doing. And everything is doing beautifully, from the flowers on top to the strawberries down to the veggies. So let me highlight a couple of things for you. These are some of the mellow yellow golden beans that I've been growing, and they have really produced well. As a matter of fact, I think it's a new favorite with Bill, so that's cool. But yeah, there's all sorts of them in here. I have several jalapeno peppers in here, and you can see some beautiful red ones as they've been maturing. There's green ones. There are so many peppers on these plants. I would be very surprised if we don't harvest about 40 to 50 of them just from the greenstock planter. And I have to warn you, they are very spicy, but jalapeno has been a good variety for us. They're an All-America Selections winner, and I'm really pleased with them. In the bottom tier of my planter, I've got a bunch of eggplants growing. They are Italian eggplants, so the more rounded ones. You can see they're doing great. I'll show you some of the other ones. And you know, after I planted eggplants in here, I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm pressing my luck by doing that, but I've been keeping a close eye on them. I have some stakes at the ready if need be, but they seem to be holding their own just fine. Here's another one. Let's see if I can just turn it. And another one. And another one. I love these deep purple ones. And this one, which is more white. That was a surprise. Okay, those are the highlights from my August garden, and I hope that you enjoyed the tour. You know, one thing I wanted to mention is last week, a lot of people commented on my video saying, oh, you have a new theme song. I like the other one better. Well, I have to explain what happened because it was so frustrating. So I needed to update my video editing software last week, and once it was all back up and running, guess what? That song isn't available anymore, and there aren't very many other songs available, so I was not happy. I'm in the market for a new theme song, but in the meantime, I hope you don't mind this one. Thanks so much for watching today, everybody. I'll see you next week. Happy gardening.